All right, Chael, I'm sure you're going to hear your voice in the background, but I'm listening to your video about Joe Rogan complaining about the judging. Just a random idea because there's already so much damn time between fights. Just like how you say it takes 4 hours to play 30 minutes of game time in team sports, it takes about 4 hours to watch 4 fights just because of the time in between them. Why not have the judging that already happens in fights, and then a panel of people that are respected, like a Joe Rogan, a Dominic Cruz, or a DC, that just logically discuss the fight and come out with an outcome of who won? Because between the judging and a discussion through a panel and the time that already exists between fights, it would create a new dynamic for the fans watching as well, because they could see, let the fighters go back to their locker rooms, then we can see in the locker rooms them waiting to find out what the result of the discussion was and if they won or not. Making the time between fights a little more entertaining so that we're actually entertained for that whole time, not just seeing awkward interviews and Megan Levy place random places in the arena. It would give us a look into the fighters, how they feel after the fight, and the anticipation of seeing who won. And you probably get a better outcome of who really won that fight because of the discussion and the judging that goes on by a rule set. Thanks. First time submitting a video, but I've been a fan of yours for years. Thank you.
Darn it, I don't have anything. I just looked in my pockets. They're both empty. I wish I had something. I need UFC tickets. I need a cash prize. I need something to award you in my 4 years at doing this for asking the worst question that I have ever heard. Literally the worst. How would that happen from a production standpoint? So the 3 judges weigh in. We bring them in. They're sanctioned by the commission. But then we bring in some guys who we just happen to like. We just happen to like Cormier and Dominic and Joe Rogan. They're going to have a discussion, a public discussion, and then they're going to come to a conclusion. Well, what, the fighters just stand in the ring? They just stand around, go, well, we've already got one people's opinion. Those people work for the government. Those people are licensed. Those people are experts in this. Those people were picked by the executive directors. But now we get to go to a comedian, a heavyweight, and we get to get Dominic's opinion because he happens to be sitting there as well. How in the hell? I mean, I wish I had. Is there anything I can give? You deserve something. It's a booby prize, but it's a prize all the same.
Hey, what's going on, Chael? I just had a quick question for you. With all the judging that happened in the Jones-Reyes fight, instead of having 3 separate judges give 3 separate opinions on the fight, why don't we have the 3 judges all combine their scores into one scorecard, if that makes any sense? So, for example, in the first round, if they all saw Reyes win the first round 10-9, put the 10-9, and then in the second round, if they 2 saw it 10-9 Reyes and the 1 saw it 10-9 Jones, the 2 are the majority, so their scores go into the official scorecard. And at the very end, instead of having 3 separate scorecards, just having one big scorecard.
I hear what you're saying on this question, and I believe that I followed you. The problem is it would be impossible to do that kind of math because based on what you're saying on a 10-9 must system, let's say it was a clean sweep and all 3 judges had it 10-9 for the same guy. At some point, we're going to have to figure out what 10 times 5 times 3 is, but we're also going to have to find out what 9 times 5 times 3 is. That's simply impossible to know.
Uncle Chael, you're the best. Amateur wrestling question for you. Number 1 guy in the U.S. ladder at 125, Dayton Fixer, I guess Thomas Gilman at this point, versus Henry Cejudo freestyle match. How does it go down? Would it be something similar to Askren and Burroughs? Henry was a little bit better freestyle wrestler than Ben. Would it even the playing field a little bit? I got my opinion how I think it's going to go down. Want to hear yours. Thanks, Uncle Chael.
Okay, first off, I am very impressed that you said now it would be Gilman and not Fix. You're wrong. Fix actually will still carry the number 1 ranking because he is the defending world team member, but I also know why you said Gilman, because you're aware of the match that happened in Italy 4 weeks ago where Gilman beat him, and my hat is off to you for knowing that. Not very many of us would. Well done by you. Let me give you a quick story. Now, this won't totally count And it won't totally count because of the size difference between Cejudo and Fix, but recently. And by recently, it would be 10 months ago. 10 months ago, Henry Cejudo happened to be in Stillwater, Oklahoma, minding his own business and doing something. He runs into John Smith. John Smith says, "What are you doing in town?" Henry answers the question. John Smith says, "Why don't you come by tomorrow and wrestle Fix? He's doing a workout at 1 o'clock. And Smith goes even further to insult Henry and say something along the lines of, unless you're scared to get your ass kicked. Now, that wasn't the words, but it was something like this. The gauntlet was laid out. Henry's got no choice but to show up. And Henry can be an Olympic champion, and he could be a hero. He can all be all these different things. Under the rules of wrestling, if John Smith tells you to be in the workout room tomorrow at 1:30, you go to the workout room tomorrow at 1:30, and that's exactly what Henry did. So Henry goes in there. There's only like 4 guys in there. 2 guys are working out over here. Fix is over here waiting for Henry. So they go and they drill. They're getting warmed up. And you do have to take into account, in all fairness, now Fix is just getting ready to go to the World Championship, so he's as peak as they could be. Henry hadn't been on a wrestling mat in a meaningful period of time, but he's in fantastic shape, and he weighs whatever he weighs. Okay, he's got some size on him. Fix is starting to get a little closer to that 121. So you really do have to factor that into this. But they're drilling, and Henry said, man, he felt good. This kid felt really good, but it gets time to go live, and Henry beats him so bad, and they're going to do 2 matches. That's what the workout's going to be, 2 matches. And you're done. So they do the first match. Henry beats him so bad, Henry might have even technical faulted him. I mean, Henry really beat him bad. So they rest and regroup, and they get their water, and, coach is talking with Fix, and I think that Henry's probably just minding his own business. I don't know that he had anybody there to back him up. They go out to do the second match. Coach Smith stops it, says, "This workout's over. Henry, thank you very much," and go home. So if you want to know how Henry would do with those top guys, for it to be a level playing field and to be able to answer that fairly, then they would all have to make weight. But if you're at all asking this question to wonder if Henry Cejudo is out of step or out of touch with the nuances and the new age top wrestlers in this country, no, he's not.
Hey Chael, Clay from Vancouver. So I just have a quick question for you, and it's regarding a fantasy booking. And emphasize the word fantasy because this is not real and it likely will never take place. But let's say for this purpose it does. Adesanya beats Romero. Romero, the 42-year-old man that he is, decides, hey, I don't want to cut weight anymore, so he moves up to 205. What are your thoughts on a John Jones versus Yoel Romero fight, and why? Because Romero has said before that he could possibly move up in the future, and I never really considered that. But now that I've said it out loud, kind of sounds like a really good fight. Granted, I know everything going on with Reyes, but for this purpose, Jones, Romero, it's happening. What's your take on it and why? Thanks.
Yeah, why the hell does Yoel Romero keep talking about the future? The guy is 44. What future? How long does he plan to go? And I'm well aware that he's a freaking age. He's a 44-year-old that's got a very legitimate shot of becoming a world champion in March of this year, right? But isn't it always a little bit peculiar when Yoel Romero is always talking about the future? And I mean that in a good way. I mean, Yoel Romero hasn't the foggiest idea that he's no longer a spring chicken. I think that's one of the things that serves Yoel Romero so well. Okay, let's break this down. I like the way that you did that, and I get that we're talking fantasy here, but if it's fair for the goose, it's fair for the gander, and if the goose in this case is Adesanya, who's the sitting champion, and people are saying he's got the right to move up and do this champ thing and get some business going with John, I hear what you're saying. Why don't we discuss it if the shoe was on the other foot, but it's the gander, and it happens to be Yoel Romero? And I like where your head's at. There was a time in this sport when I wanted Yoel to go to 205 pounds, and I did think Yoel will be the guy to bring down John Jones. And I didn't think it for a meaningful period of time, and I wasn't real bullish on it, but I see what you see. Here's the problem with Romero, and there's only one. The problem with Romero is he is such a dynamic and explosive athlete. Before he is a great wrestler, before he is a great fighter, first and foremost is he is an explosive and dynamic athlete. If you go and watch Yoel Romero's fights, and I don't care if it was with Ronnie Marks and what I believe was his debut, I don't care if it was the infamous stool gate against Tim Kennedy. I don't care if it was in the ass whipping he was taking to Chris Weidman. If you go the Luke Rockhold fight, which was a little bit closer, but it will still prove my point that when Yoel Romero puts his foot down on the gas, he is so explosive and fast, he'll send you home. You're going home. It doesn't matter if you beat him for 13 minutes. If there's 2 minutes left on the clock, but he decides those are the 2 minutes when I'm going to go, he'll send you home. He'll end your night. First and foremost is he's explosive, and the only reason I bring that up is so many people will think it's going to take a dynamic wrestler, okay, to beat Jon Jones. It's going to take somebody that can put Jon in a position and hold him there long enough to win rounds. The other school of thought of beating Jon Jones is put him in there with a big puncher that can put him to sleep. These are compliments to Jon to the highest of levels, because what this represents is nobody's as good as you, and we don't think on a fair shake straight up that anybody's going to beat you. So let's find somebody that's got a chance to either put you to sleep or to hold you in a position that the judges are just giving seconds off the clock and are going to mark the sheet in your favor. Pretty good compliment to Jon Jones. The problem when you bring Yoel Romero in is on paper, Yoel does fit the bill. But if you go and watch Yoel's career, he just doesn't use it. He just doesn't use that wrestling. He didn't, I mean, even recently with Paulo Costa, even if you want to back up a little further and look at Robert Whittaker, he just doesn't. And he has it, and you have to respect it, and guys do, but he doesn't go to it enough times. I believe it is a tool that is no longer sharp. And I will tell you from following his amateur wrestling career, which is something that I'll trust you didn't do. And that's not your fault. Very hard to follow amateur wrestling. There's only a couple of websites, and you got to know where they are, and then you got to know what time to log in, and it could be 3 a.m. because that's 11 a.m. in Kakistan or Havana. Some of the weird places that they're, Warsaw, some of the weird places they wrestle, man. If you don't want to be up at 4 a.m. to go catch a tournament, you're going to miss the tournament. But one thing about Romero, even there, he wasn't Mr. Double Leg guy or grab you and hit you with an inside trip or come in and use some over-under positions, body lock, snap you down. It wasn't a whole lot of wrestling technique. He was an explosive athlete, and he would pick his spots. Yoel Romero could be wrestling in the finals of a major Class A tournament. He's going to win by 1 point. And he's probably going to only have 1 point, and you just happen to have 0 points. Or Yoel could go into a junior high against a 12-year-old who's never done it before. He's going to win by 1 point. He only scores when he has to. He only turns it on when he has to. He doesn't want to show any of the competition what he's been working on. He doesn't want to have to work any harder than he has to. He's one of those guys, and it's not just him. The entire Cuban national team will do the same thing. You never get to know how good they are. You'll go see a Cuban wrestle, and you won't know who the Cuban is, be a new guy that they sent out for the first time, but you'll know who the opponent is. And all of a sudden, man, that's a real push and pull, real nail biter. Ooh, that was a close match, and the Cuban won by 2. And okay, the Cuban must not be very good. He kind of looks like he's in line with the guy he just beat here by 2 points. No, the Cuban was holding back. Cuban was rope-a-doping. Cuban was thinking about the next round and wondering who's videotaping and whose coach from Russia is taking notes and going to go take that back to Dagestan and share it with the boys. They won't do any more than they have to. Only score when you have to. Only win when you have to. Only compete when you have to. And Yoel has taken that into MMA. It's very fun to watch. It's very fun because you're on the edge of your seat the whole time, and you know he hasn't sprint yet. He's out there fighting. He's out there coasting. He's out there going a pretty good pace, but he hasn't hit the sprint. When Yoel Romero hits the sprint, it's lights out. The only guy that's ever absorbed a sprint from Yoel, and he happened to absorb it twice, but the only guy is the same guy, and his name's Robert Whittaker. That's the problem with Romero. If you're trying to say he is such a decorated wrestler to the extent that I believe he can go and take and hold Jon down. False. He's not. He's a great fighter. He'd go with Jon Jones. I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll watch that fight. I won't pick Romero in that fight. I'll pick Jon in that fight, but I'll watch the fight. But that's only because the paper and the resume of Yoel Romero, in conjunction with his history and the skills and his plan A and plan B as it pertains to his mixed martial arts career, are light years apart.
What's up, Chael? Big fan here. My question is just about the lightweight division. Seems like everybody has a fight lined up, except for one guy, and that's Dustin Poirier, you know? He's still the number 2 ranked contender, but it seems like everybody's forgot about him. Where does Dustin Poirier fit into all this? Thanks, man.
You know, I've been wondering that same thing, but it's a little bit different as it pertains to Dustin Poirier, okay? This is a guy who's just come off the highest of highs, and I will tell you it's very tough. I mean, don't forget, back up a little bit, he's fighting for a world championship with Max, okay? He wins it. So then he goes and fights for another world championship. In his mind, defending it. Khabib's mind, his is on the line. However you want to do that. In a stadium that they built just for this contest. Now, he ends up not winning it. But no matter what you do if you're Dustin Poirier, it's a step down. Okay? Because it's not going to be for a world title. But set that aside. They built a stadium for him and Khabib. I mean, come on. You can't go any higher than that. Tom Brady never had a stadium built for him. Michael Jordan never had a stadium built for him. LeBron has never had a stadium. Serena, Tiger, Mayweather, you name it. Dustin Poirier had a stadium built for him. So whatever he does is going to be a step down. And he understands that, but he would like to lessen. He'd like to make that a step down. He doesn't want to make that 5 steps down. I mean, that mentally, there's a lot on the line here for Dustin, where he's going, man, I've done a really good job. I made it to the absolute heights. I ran into a guy that 27 other men also couldn't deal with. But I don't want to go to the bottom of the order, and I don't belong at the bottom of the order. And I agree with him on that. I spoke to Dustin Poirier on the telephone. I said, man, where are you at on Volkanovski? Because I got no problem fighting Volkanovski. I got a big problem with making 145. I would love to hear more about it if I'm officially being offered that. But if I'm being candid with you, I don't love the idea of 145. Okay, fine. But that could have been a place where Dustin slipped in. Now, Dustin has come out and said that he is willing to fight Gaethje as long as it's April 18th. As long as it is April 18th, relevance being that's the night when Khabib and Tony are finally going to get it on. Gaethje said, I want to go into the batter's box. This fight has fallen through 4 times. Put me in the batter's box. I'll be in shape. I'll weigh in. I'll do the whole bit, and I'll step in against either one of those guys. Poirier hears about that, and Poirier goes, well, not so fast. We've already fought once. It was a hell of a fight, and I respect you a lot, but I would also like that opportunity. So let's do this. I'll just meet you on that card. We'll both have something to train for. We'll both have a paycheck coming our way, and should something come up, we both now get looked at for who steps in. That's what Poirier said. I have not heard Poirier say anything since then. So I do agree with you. I think he's laying just a little bit low right now. I think he's being very smart at steering his own ship. I think it was very smart to try to put himself opposite Gaethje in terms of as long as it's on that card that night and one of us gets pulled off the sidelines. I hope he waits. I do hope he waits just a little bit. Poirier is one of these guys that deserves something great to happen to him. Everybody likes Poirier. Everybody wants to work with Poirier. And I think it's wise, and I think that it's okay in his case. Most times this would piss me off. In this case, I think it's okay that Poirier put the brakes on, pull his oars out of the water, and look around just a little bit.